Man, I've gotten to a point where I really, really adore the Owl House, but I am so happy at this point that after putting out this review, I'm not going to have to talk about it again until next weekend. Because I'm like this close to getting burnt out on the show, which is not good when a show that I plan to talk about professionally on my YouTube channel just started its second season. That said, as far as season premieres go, Separate Tides is really strong. We saw at the very end of the season 1 finale that now that Luce is out of contact with her mom indefinitely, as far as we know anyway, she's gonna start being more open in whatever ways she can. She started making video recordings for her mom for whenever they see each other again, or for whenever she can send them again, I guess. More realistically, she wouldn't need to give her mom the video recordings if they see each other, right? But you get the gist. She has moved on from avoiding communicating with her mom and has started doing so as directly as she possibly can, given the state of things. And so even though this takes place a full week and a half after the end of Young Blood Old Souls, and hence she and her various housemates should have fallen into a new status quo at this point and understand their situation, the episode is able to open on the second of those video recordings with Luce catching her mom up on what's been going on, and therefore we, the audience, can get caught up too. The exposition feels very natural, as does the exposition that comes next at the market, where we learn things like they've been bounty hunting since Ida doesn't have access to any human garbage to sell anymore. Like, we even saw technically one of their bounty hunting cases at the very, very beginning of this episode. But, like, it was literally just a teaser, right? Though it is worth noting that the bounty they were going after was this big, fierce demon in his poster. But he was decidedly not fearsome when they finally found him. He had fearsome aspirations, sure, but he was not a scary creature at all. And this is not the first time we've seen this with demons. Like, even King seems to think he's way fiercer than he actually is. It almost seems like everything from the published books in this world to things like bounties from the Emperor play up how dangerous nonconformist demons are. Demons who either are too different or choose not to or simply can't conform to his system. They play up how dangerous they are so that people will hunt the demons down and they can be silenced. How terrifying is that? But anyway, so they're bounty hunting now. But because Ida doesn't have her powers anymore and therefore isn't a threat to anyone, they're cheating her out of her bounties. And we can see from how many bounties she's bringing at once that it's been a while since they've turned any in, so it makes sense that they might be surprised by this and would have to kind of catch up each other on the state of things right now as they exist in the moment, right? Like Lilith, for example, when she sees that Ida doesn't command any respect anymore, strolling up and attempting to use her past role as head of the Emperor's Coven to demand respect in Ida's place, and failing because she's a traitor now, that makes sense. That makes sense as far as exposition goes. It all feels supernatural, and not like supernatural, but like it feels very natural as a part of the dialogue, which is so hard to do with exposition, and it's why a lot of premiere episodes, series premieres, season premieres, kind of flounder a little bit. They feel more like they're for the audience than a usual show should after suspension of disbelief. But here it just works. I liked it a lot. I'm very bad at writing exposition. It's always nice to see somebody who gets it right? I even really like after Luce insists that, hey, maybe we should take a really big bounty, the biggest one we can find, to cheer you up, Ida. Ida insisting that they go for a smaller one. She picks out, what was he called, the Abominable Cutie Pie, who even in those trumped up, hyped up bounty images, you can't make this guy look scary. And oh, look at that, he happens to be right here in the market. Why don't you go get him, Luce? So she goes and runs and chases after him and climbs up the new statue of the Emperor that's in the middle of the market now, because he's really not so much cracking down as just making sure people remember that he's there, right? Also, funny enough, the statue has a crack over the same eye that Luce put a crack in his mask over. I'm sure in universe it's a coincidence, but I wonder if that means something, like from a lore perspective. Like it's a hint at something, right? Anyway, she chases him up the statue, and I guess Ida wasn't paying attention to where exactly Luce chased him to, because she's talking to Lilith at the base of the statue. And we hear talk of how they're having to do without. Like, not overall. Like, all of them are having to do without a little bit. But, like, they can't buy the apple blood that they like, for example. Because Luce can't digest it. So they're just buying foods that all of them can eat. And Ida hasn't told her about this. And that's why she's worried about taking larger bounties. If they screw up even once, putting that much time into a big bounty, then they miss out on all those opportunities that those smaller bounties afforded them. It's excellent exposition. It's worked in so effortlessly. Makes me a little jealous, frankly. And it also serves as an effective trigger for the story and the drama of this episode, because now Luce feels like she isn't doing enough to help out, even though she has changed these people for the better, despite the fact that their situation is worse, technically speaking, now than it used to be. They are better people for it, and they all appreciate her so much for everything that she has done and everything that she still does now. She feels like she's not doing enough, and that is such a relatable feeling. Like, even the abominable cutie pie is sympathetic towards her. He's as sympathetic as one might be if, say, someone's girlfriend got turned into the moon or something.
That's rough, buddy.
Insert clip. And so, of course, Luce, feeling like she has to carry more of the load, does the only thing that makes sense. She joins the crew of a ship going out to sea to hunt a giant seal monster. A situation which all of us have found ourselves in at least once in our lives. And this creature, the Selkie-Damas, is not only an interesting monster who plays an interesting role in the rest of the episode, but making this a sea creature, sending Luce out to sea, affords opportunities for not just like pirate jokes and seafarer jokes, but like we get to see Luce apply her magic in ways that we haven't before. And she's getting really good at it. It's really cool. The way she applies her magic now is extremely effective. She's always been good at seeing how magic can be used intuitively. It seems like she's moved beyond that to noticing the more advanced ways that different kinds of magic can be applied to situations involving each other, which I'm floundering over how to say this exactly, because it's not like she's mixing the magic yet. That does come later, like the next episode. I've already seen the next episode, obviously, because of the leak. In the next episode, the idea of mixing these runes together to create new kinds of magic out of them is presented to us. And I think all the stuff with Luce's magic in this episode was here to show us that she's already got a mind for that. She's already got a mind for how different runes can be applied together in situations. That's going to help her master that pretty quickly. I also really like the detail that they both approach it in different ways, but Lilith and Ida both were in the potion track back at Hexside. So they're both potion makers, and potions is a kind of magic you can make, I guess, without access to your actual internal magic. So they can still do potion stuff. They're going to learn the rune stuff eventually, but they can still do potion stuff. And so Ida is, you can tell, already starting to think about supplementing herself day to day with potions. She's wearing a potion bandolier around for the rest of this episode after this scene, for example. And Lilith, searching for a way to start making up to Ida for all that she did to her in the past, creates a scrying potion to try to show her how in disarray the Emperor and his forces are, now that they don't have her to guide them anymore. It's very Lilith of her. It's a very arrogant, self-centric way of looking at the situation, even when she is trying to be selfless and helpful. But the sentiment is still there, and it's nice. It's nice that that's what they go to when they don't have access to the rest of their magic, considering that we saw very definitively in just the previous episode that they were both in the potions track. That's something they would know inherently. Like, let's actually touch on the rest of Lilith's plot before I get into the climax of the episode. It's interesting because you don't realize until, like, at least halfway through the episode what the message of this one's supposed to be. Because, like, the Owl House has never felt as much like a message show as some shows have. But it's definitely a message show. It's just a message show where it felt like the episodes were about something else first, and the message was just kind of corollary, right? Even Amphibia, I think, puts a little bit more emphasis on the message of the episode than the Owl House tends to. And yet here, well, there was definitely a takeaway from the events of this episode. The characters learned something. We're supposed to learn it along with them. It felt like this episode was about everything going on with the characters, and the message was just, like, is ancillary the right word? It was there. It was a thing to be picked up on. But I definitely feel like the message of this one grew organically from a story that the crew was trying to tell. That message being that sometimes there are things that you just can't do alone. So Lilith, she goes out to gather ingredients for the scrying potion. One of the ingredients is fire bee honey. Just when I thought the boiling isles couldn't get more terrifying. And it's really cute. Hooty is trying to be friends with Lilith. He thinks they're already friends, because he's weird and thinks that when he used to defend the house from her, they were playing. But he thinks they're already friends, so he wants to help. And it's cute and it's sweet, and I'm glad we're actually getting some Hooty development that doesn't involve everyone being, to different degrees, terrified of him or annoyed of him, I guess, also a lot of the time. But when Lilith first tells him that she doesn't want his help, and he decides he's going to follow her anyway, he looks right at the camera and he talks right to us. Can he see us? He's like, you know how sometimes you'll be reading a Deadpool comic and you kind of half buy that, like, that character, he can actually see me. I totally buy that Hooty could actually see me. And it terrifies me to my core. But anyway, she does end up telling him off again later, and it's heartbreaking because he is just trying to be a good friend to her. And he does grow from this. He learns that you shouldn't push. You should respect people's boundaries. And he does continue to respect her boundaries as she asks for help, because otherwise she's going to be immolated by fire bees. And he's glorious. Like, this is the first time that Hooty has really shown off how powerful he was. And I haven't felt afraid of him. This felt like a heroic moment, like a crowning moment of heroism or something for him. Rather than, hey, Hooty is scary. Laugh at how scary he is. It felt like they were genuinely trying to do something new with him. And then by the end, Lilith has accepted him as a friend, and it looks like they're going to be pals going forward. The next episode even supports that further. So I look forward to seeing how that develops. Like, I like Lilith. I know that's a bit of a controversial opinion amongst the fandom, but I like Lilith. I feel like she's a misguided person who was influenced by the system that she found herself in to do some terrible things, and she's going to have to unlearn that. And I like the person that she is now, and I'm expecting that I'll like the person that she becomes later on. But she's kind of an outcast from this group. She's not part of the main Owl House core group yet. And Hooty isn't either. They're both kind of outcasts. It works that they would become close. Meanwhile, as all this is happening, Luce is on that hunt for the Selkie Damas. And I looked it up. I tried to research what that name means. Like, I know what a Selkie is. It's the Selkies are the seal folk. They're from Celtic mythology, I think. So what it is, they're basically people who can turn... They're like werewolf seals, kind of. It's more complicated than that. Go read about them. They're very interesting. This creature doesn't seem to be any kind of shapeshifter, though. And the closest I could find for the Damas part is Greek. It could mean something like the ruler of, for example. So, like, the ruler of Selkies. maybe. But, like, I don't like mixing cultures like that, so who frickin' knows? Who frickin' knows what this thing's name means? But I was looking it up because they put so much emphasis on this creature here. Like, when they finally find it, it does attack the ship. But we find out that the ship is an Imperial ship. It belongs to the Emperor. The Golden Guard, the masked character from the new opening that we saw a couple times, I think, towards the end of last season, is on the ship. He's been hiding in, like, the captain's quarters, and he ends up causing trouble by the end of the episode. So it's perfectly reasonable to assume that this creature recognized the ship as an Imperial ship, because it seems like representatives of the Emperor have been coming this way quite often. Like, there's a whole bunch more burning ships by its little island that I imagine were probably people here seeking this bounty too, right? It seems like the Emperor really wants this thing dead, and it's got a kid to protect, so of course it's going to lash out and attack any ships that come close, especially if it recognizes them as ships belonging to the person trying to kill it and its child. And Ida, to her credit, knows enough about this creature, maybe even from King, because, like, I wouldn't call this thing a demon. Like, it's definitely not a witch. Like, I know there are, like, animals in this world too, right? But, I don't know, this feels more like a magical creature of some kind. I could buy it being the kind of thing that King is interested in. But she knows it's not an inherently harmful creature. So when she shows up trying to rob the Emperor's ship, not knowing that Luce is on board, and then the Golden Guard shows up. He's like, hey, I'm going to make your lives even worse than they already are. He threatens King a little bit too, though. Interestingly, he doesn't seem to know who King is, just that he's important to them. He's like, yeah, I'm going to do all this stuff unless you kill this thing for me, because the Emperor wants it dead. It's Ida, of all people, who is seeking a way to get what they want, that being not having their lives further ruined, without hurting this thing. It's just unexpected. It's not what I would expect. And this is where the lesson comes in for Luce. And so the two of them team up to trick the Golden Guard into thinking that they killed the creature. And it's intelligent enough. Like, you can tell it can't communicate with him. It can't talk. It just doesn't have the parts to talk. But it's an intelligent enough creature to understand what's happening, play along, and when it realizes that they're trying to help, it listens to Ida, first of all, and understands her when she says it has to move out further to sea to keep its child safe. But then it gives them a reward, Selkie Gris, which they can use to make some money, to survive. Like, they're even talking about getting takeout by the end of the episode, which is quite the extravagance. And it's a nice little story. It's a nice, concise, efficient little story that gets us up to speed on everything that's going on, builds the world a bit, is funny and charming, as this show tends to be, has some good character stuff in it. Like, King, for example, was captured by the Golden Guard for a short period of time here, and there's this really funny gag. While anytime they lower the tarp over his cage, he thinks it's nighttime and goes to sleep. It's adorable. It's funny. It's like, this show is just very charming. But I can't help thinking, why does the Emperor want this thing dead? What is the point of killing a harmless creature that's out at sea, not bothering anybody? Like, I say harmless. Obviously, the thing isn't harmless. It can hurt you. But it's not like it's going to. It has no reason to do that. Literally, the only reason it's hurting people now is because you tried to kill it first, you dumbass. And so I'm left thinking, if this thing is some kind of ruler of the sea or something that has power over the sea in some way, maybe Bellows just doesn't want it to have that. Maybe he wants such complete control that he can't even suffer this thing to live. And that's, I don't know, it's so weird. Like, it could be something as simple as what I suggested earlier, that just any creatures that, for whatever reason, are not equipped or refuse to fall in line with the system have to go. But it feels like there's more to this than that. And then mysteries around the Emperor increase when we actually see the scrying potion in effect. And at first, Lilith just, uses it to try to prove the point that I mentioned earlier, that the guards can't do anything without her. They're all hopeless. But we, the audience, linger on the potion a little bit longer than our characters do. We see a secret door open in a wall, move through it, and there's Bellows next to his portal that's still under construction, putting on his mask, and we see he's got long grayish hair. And then he turns to the camera and he says, "Knock, knock, human," which I don't know what the show is trying to imply with this. I don't like this. I don't like this line. Like, him turning to the camera would have been fine, but it sounds here like he's talking to Luce. Like he knows that she was looking in on his palace. And considering that he has the portal hidden behind a magic door, if there was the possibility that she had seen it, I would imagine him to be a little more angry about that and not just make a little door pun. So I'm left wondering, is that what we were supposed to take away from this? Like, he has some kind of supernatural sight. He was able to tell when Luce and her friends were trying to steal the relics from his castle, for example. He even seemed to recognize, like, he seemed to know to some degree who they were, right? So maybe it's possible that magic used in his vicinity, even if it's like distant magic that like pokes in on his vicinity, that's stuff he can detect, and he can kind of detect to a degree who's involved in using it. And so he knew Luce was involved, but didn't know what she had seen. But I feel like that would make it worse. Like, he'd be even more worried in that situation, right? Or he knew exactly what she saw. Knew that she hadn't seen anything, and he's just aware of everything that they're doing. That would mean that he's just aware of everything that they're doing. And, like, you can't give your villain that much power, and I can't imagine the writers of this would. That means that either he's going to kill them the moment they become a legitimate threat to him in the future, before the story can get going, or he's not, and it's not going to make sense why he didn't, right? So I have to wonder, one, was this just for the sake of the audience, reminding us that he's here and that he's their enemy? Or is this more evidence to support the fact that the portal he's planning to open is a portal to Earth? I.e., knock, knock, human. I don't know. I don't know what this means, and I don't like that the line is included there, because I feel like it doesn't make narrative sense. Him looking at the camera, I feel, would have been enough. It feels like he's talking to us, I guess, is my problem. And unlike with Hooty, I don't buy that Bellows has the power to break the fourth wall. Still, that is a minor nitpick in what is otherwise just an excellent season premiere. I liked this episode a lot. Had a very different aesthetic to the rest of the show, too. Like, just having Lilith around in her new updated couch witch clothes, it changed the aesthetic of the show overall a little bit. And then you've got Luce running around in her Team Aqua cosplay, using the staff sometimes. And all this stuff at sea, it was recognizable as the Owl House. This is still the Owl House with the Owl House storytelling and the Owl House characters, but it felt like more than that. And it felt decidedly different at the same time. And that's what you want from a season premiere going into the show after it's had a major status quo shakeup. Things feel like they've settled down, but they don't feel like they've gone back to normal. And I do know that this, let's call it a furthering of the status quo, I guess, this furthering of the establishment in this new status quo is going to carry over into the next episode and probably the next couple of episodes after that too. And I'm looking forward to it so much. I'm looking forward to talking about next week's episode, which I've already seen a lot. I want to talk about that one a lot, but looking at some of the episode summations that we've gotten so far, there are some that I'm really looking forward to watching. As per usual, I'd like to know, what are your thoughts on this episode? I'm really genuinely curious about this time too. Like, I'm always genuinely curious, but like more so than usual, I'm genuinely curious to hear what people think of this episode and the new feel for the show and all of that. So let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think would enjoy my content, subscribe. If you haven't, you can also check out links to my various social medias, which I do eventually intend to start using again, as well as the various ways you can help the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.